Hi everyone, and welcome back to another Stay Healthy and Waste Less class. My name is Danielle and I'm a nutrition educator with Leah's Pantry, and I'm also a huge fan of sauerkraut, which is what I'll be making today. Just a reminder, if you're a resident of San Mateo County, please fill out our online form after you've watched this class in order to receive your Veggie RX vouchers. The link to the form will be included in this video description. And again, the Veggie RX vouchers allow you to buy fruits and vegetables at local farmers markets, and they never expire. So once you fill out a form, we'll mail you the vouchers and send you a voucher guide, which includes a list of farmers markets and how to use the vouchers. As I mentioned, today I'll be making sauerkraut, which is fermented cabbage. Fermenting is a type of food preservation. So when you ferment things, they last longer. Some examples of common fermented foods include yogurt, some cheeses, especially the softer, really stinky ones, pickles, olives, beer and wine, kombucha, and even some meats like salami and pastrami. So we eat a lot of fermented foods. And one benefit of fermentation is that it produces probiotics, which is just a fancy word for kind of good gut bacteria. And some benefits of probiotics are that they replenish and diversify our intestinal bacteria, which is a good thing. And there's more and more research that shows how our gut health and the presence of those good bacteria really supports our overall health, especially our immunity. I've also really enjoyed this book, The Art of Fermentation by Sandor Katz, and it talks about the rich history of fermentation. We've been doing this for thousands of years, so it explains how different fermented foods are traditional to different cultures around the world and also offers a variety of wonderful recipes. So sauerkraut is arguably the most simple fermented food you can make. It only requires 2 ingredients. Yes, you heard that right, just 2 ingredients: cabbage and salt. You can add a lot of other spices and aromatic things like garlic, but all you really need are those 2 ingredients. The traditional sauerkraut recipe uses caraway seeds and juniper berries, but again, I'm gonna keep it really simple today. Great, let's get started. So I have the main ingredients that I'll need: cabbage and salt. I'm choosing purple cabbage because I think it looks beautiful, and also it's important to remember to eat the rainbow of fruits and vegetables. Different colors of the rainbow correspond with different vitamins and minerals. So by eating a variety of colors, you get a variety of vitamins. And purple is something that I don't eat a lot of. So what are other examples of purple fruits and vegetables? There's blueberries. Those are actually kind of blue, but kind of purple too. Eggplant, grapes. But still, I don't get that much of those, so eating the purple cabbage is an easy way to get some purple in. I love cabbage too. This is probably my favorite vegetable there is because it's so versatile. You can use it in so many different ways and recipes, whether it's slaw, you can cook it, you can obviously ferment it, and it lasts a while. When you are doing sauerkraut though, I would recommend trying to use fresh cabbage. So fresh cabbage has more of the water still in it, and that water is really important for the fermentation process. I use just sea salt, fine, because it's easier to kind of work and massage into the cabbage. Also, table salt I wouldn't recommend because that has iodine added to it, and that can impact the fermentation process. I'm using a mandolin. It makes slicing the cabbage easier, but you can also use a knife and just slice as finely as you can. You need a bowl. You also need a tablespoon. And finally, a quart glass mason jar. If you don't have a mason jar, you can also use old pickle jars, old large jelly jars, kind of whatever you have. A lid to seal the jar. Making sauerkraut, that fermentation process does not need oxygen, so it's fine to cover it. One thing to note is that when you cover the sauerkraut, it does produce naturally occurring gas during the fermentation process. So you'll want to unscrew the lid every day to release the pressure. Another option that I recently discovered is if you don't want to have to worry about the seal and remembering to release the pressure, because otherwise the danger of that is if you don't release the pressure, you might get an explosion of things. That actually happened to me with kombucha, which you don't release the pressure daily, but I just let it ferment for too long. And my roommate woke up in the middle of the night to an explosion, and she's like, "Why does it smell like trash in here?" And that was just the fermented kombucha all over our kitchen. Another option for releasing the gas every day is I recently discovered these little synthetic filters that are the same size as the mouth of a mason jar. And they're actually for mushroom cultivation, but you can use them to kind of seal the jar. So you just use the rim, seal it that way. And those filters release the oxygen or let oxygen transfer through, but are fine enough to not let the water kind of evaporate, because you always want the brine above the cabbage. The final thing to mention is I sterilized my jar because you don't want any existing bacteria that's already on this jar to influence the fermentation process and the naturally occurring bacteria that you'll find in the sauerkraut. What I'm going to do is just start shredding the cabbage. And again, you want it pretty fine because then it's just easier to massage the salt into, and it'll break down a little faster. Cabbage is a very dense food. You saw the initial size was about this big, and then once I shred it, it's overflowing on my cutting board. I love this recipe and just cabbage in general because you can really use all of it. I'm just not using this little nub, and actually even the rest of the purple part I can shred. You could even use the little nub if you wanted to. It's a great way to utilize the entire vegetable. So now I'm gonna add all of this to a large mixing bowl. And then all I need to do is add a tablespoon of salt. This cabbage was a little bigger, so I'm gonna add a little bit more. Now comes the fun hands-on part, and this is why I made sure we washed our hands and removed any rings, because now you just massage the cabbage for about 5 minutes. When we start, you can still see the white of the cabbage, but as we massage it, more liquid will be released and it will become more uniformly purple. This is a great way to include kids in the kitchen. So if you have kids that like to be hands-on, you can get them to massage the cabbage for, 5 minutes, even 10. The longer you massage it, the better. One thing that the salt does is that in addition to creating the brine, or just kind of the salt water that preserves the sauerkraut, the salt also helps release the sugar in the cabbage, which aids in the fermentation process. Salt has been used as a preservative, for thousands of years. So it's neat to see how when it's added to different foods, they can really be transformed. So I massaged the cabbage for about 5 minutes, and hopefully you can tell it has completely transformed. So when I initially added it, it was almost to the top of the bowl. Now it's kind of compressed at the bottom of the bowl, and look at all that liquid. This is the brine that will help ferment the cabbage and turn it into sauerkraut. So the kraut has sat, I've kind of left it alone for about an hour. That allows more liquid to be released, and that just makes it easier during the next stage. After you've massaged the sauerkraut and let it rest for like about an hour, This is the point at which you would add other spices. So this is when you could add the caraway, the juniper berries. I've made sauerkraut with green cabbage and added turmeric, ginger, and garlic, and it ended up being this beautiful gold color. And also this is another traditional sauerkraut recipe is kimchi, which is the Korean version of sauerkraut. And that has some heat. So it has some spicy red pepper paste, ginger, garlic, green onions, and that is a really delicious variation as well. So while I recommend starting with just the basic recipe, you can definitely ad-lib and get creative with the different flavors you use for your sauerkraut. So now I'm just going to add it to the sterilized jar. As you start to have more and more cabbage in the jar, you'll want to pack it down, because again, what's really important is to make sure that the liquid line is above the cabbage, because it's that liquid or that brine that's preserving and fermenting the slaw. This one won't quite go to the top. Have a little more to add, but that's fine. It doesn't need to go to the top. I like making these smaller amounts too, because then you can just play with different flavors and different combinations and see what your favorite combo and approach is. When you cover it and let this ferment, more liquid will be released. So even if it's not perfectly covered at the beginning, oftentimes in 3 hours, in a day, that liquid level will rise more kind of or higher above the cabbage. The fact that this fermented food doesn't need oxygen to ferment also makes it a little easier to control for unwanted mold or bacteria. Hopefully you can see that liquid line is above the cabbage. So now I'm just going to add the lid to this, cover it well, and then now the fun part, or the less fun part, is the waiting for 5 to 14 days. So I don't even start tasting it until after 5 days. The longer you let it rest, the tangier it gets. So I would start tasting it after 5 days to see if it kind of meets your tangy requirement. Another thing to remember is to release the pressure every day. So gas will build up as this ferments. So just release it. It's also a good opportunity to check the liquid level and make sure the cabbage is below the brine. So release it every day, close it back up, leave it on your counter. The ideal fermentation temperature is about 65 degrees. So just be mindful of that. If you live in a hotter environment, sometimes you can put in a cabinet or someplace that might be a little cooler, or if you have a very cold house, you could put it in a slightly warmer place, which might be on top of your fridge. I won't be able to taste it in front of you and rave about its delicious flavor, but just know that in 5 days, this will be a delicious treat. And some ways that I like to use it, it's pretty versatile. You can put it on sandwiches. I love to put it on top of my eggs. You can put it in a salad on top of rice and roasted veggies. It's just a great condiment to add a little flavor and some beautiful color too. Thanks so much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed learning about how to make your own sauerkraut. So if you're a San Mateo resident, please don't forget to fill out the online form so we can send you the Veggie RX vouchers. Stay healthy and waste less, everyone. See you later.